बरनहु रघुवर विमल यशो जो दायक फलचार। बुद्धिहीन तनु जानिके सुमिरो पवन कुमार। बल बुद्धि विद्या देहु मोहि हरहु कलेश विकार। जय हनुमान ज्ञान गुण सागर। जय कपीश तिहु लोक उजागर। रामदूत अतुलित बलधामा अंजनी पुत्र पवन सुत नामा। महावीर विक्रम बजरंगी कुमति निवार सुमति के संगी। कंचन वरन विराज सुवेशा कानन कुंडल कुंचित केशा। हाथ वज्र और ध्वजा विराजे कांधे मूझ जनेऊ साजे। शंकर सुवन केसरी नंदन तेज प्रताप महाजगवंदन। विद्यावान गुणी अति चातुर राम काज करिवे को आतुर। प्रभु चरित्र सुनबे को रसिया राम लखन सीता मन बसिया। सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सियाहि दिखावा विकट रूप धरि लंक जलावा। भीम रूप धरि असुर सहारे रामचंद्र के काज सवारे। लाए सजीवन लखन जियावे श्री रघुवीर हरषि उर लावे। रघुपति कीनी बहुत बड़ाई तुम मम प्रिय भरतहि सब भाई। सहस बदन तुम्हरो यस गावे अस कहि श्रीपति कंठ लगावे। शंकाधिक ब्रह्मांड मुनीषा नारद सारद सहित अहिसा। यम कुबेर दिक्पाल चाहते कवि गोविंद कही सके कहाते। तुम उपकार सुग्रीव ही कीना राम मिलाए राज पद दीना, तुम्हरो मंत्र विभीषण माना, लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना, युग सहस्र योजन पर बानु, दिलो ताहि मधुर फल जानु, प्रभु मो कृपा मेली मुख माही, जल दिलांगी गए अचरज नाही, दुर्गम काज जगत के चेते, सुगम अनुग्रह तुम्हारे तेते, राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे, हूतन आज्ञा विनु वैसारे, सब सुख रहे तुम्हारी शरणा, तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना, आपन तेज सम्हारो आपे, तीनों लोग हाकते कापे, भूत विशाज निकट नहीं आवे, महावीर जब नाम सुनावे, नाशे रोग हरे सब पीड़ा, जपत निरंतर हनुमत वीरा, संकट से हनुमान छुड़ावे, मन क्रम वचन ध्यान जो लावे, सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा, तिनके काज सकल तुम साजा, और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे, सोई अमित जीवन फल पावे, जो चरण जो सब चरण जोग परताप तुम्हारा, हे परिसिद्ध जगत उजियारा, साधु संत के तुम रखवारे, असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे, अष्ट सिद्धि नवनिधि के दाता, असवर दीन जानकी माता, राम रसायन तुम्हारे पासा, सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा, तुम्हारे भजन राम को पावे, जन्म जन्म के दुख विसरावे, अंत काल रघुवरपुर जाई, जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाई, और देवता जितन धरे, हनुमत हनुमत से ही सर्व सुख करे ही, संकट कटे मिटे सब पीड़ा, जो सुमिरे हनुमत बलवीरा। जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई, कृपा करो गुरुदेव की नाहि, जह बंध महासुख होई, जो यह पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा, होए सिद्धि साखी कोरीसा। तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा, कीजे नाथ हृदय डेरा। पवन तनया संकट हरन, मंगल मूर्ति रूप, राम लखन सीता सहित, हृदय बसहु सुरभूप। बोलिए पवन सुत हनुमान की जय।
Welcome. Welcome to Satsang, to the banks of Mother Ganga, to this beautiful, beautiful sunset right along the banks of Mother Ganga. Slowly, slowly, as the days get shorter, as the nights come a little bit earlier, we've shifted into this new time so that we can be sure to bring you not only satsang, but the beautiful, beautiful image of the sun setting into the waters of Mother Ganga, as we come together in satsang to also have the beautiful darshan of Ganga. So happy to be able to connect with all of you in your homes, in your rooms, wherever you're sitting and joining us from, as we endure the continued days, weeks, way of having our spiritual practice, having our spiritual programs, even in the midst of the pandemic, of staying home, of not traveling, and being able to come together through these beautiful, beautiful assistance of technology.
Pranam, Sadhviji. The first question that has come in today for satsang is, from your perspective, how do you get rid of addictions from things like alcohol or eating disorders? I know it's not healthy and I want to quit, but I'm struggling right now. And there's a second part to this question also, which is, there's so much news about the Bollywood industry and alcohol dependence and all of this, and it's really a wonder how celebrities who basically have everything and who people would want to be are still going through addictions, and how to understand that.
Okay. So it's a two-part question, and I'm going to take them as two separate parts. Because recreational alcohol and drug use, while it certainly is something that can and does in many cases lead to addiction, it isn't the same as addiction. And so we'll take the two different questions separately. First is dealing with addiction. Alcohol addiction, drug addiction, eating disorders. To the questioner who asked this and who said, I'm trying to overcome this, but it's hard. Yeah, it is hard. Do not feel on any level like you're weak. Do not feel like there is something wrong with you, that somehow you can't beat it. One of the greatest, I think, misservices, injustices that we do in our society is we make people think that it's just a matter of buckling down and you'll kick it. Drug addictions, alcohol addictions, eating disorders, depression, whatever it may be. But this idea that somehow if you're suffering from that you're weak, that there's something wrong with you, that if you just were stronger, somehow you would be able to overcome it. There's a lot of factors that go into addiction, that goes into alcoholism, that goes into drug addiction, that goes into eating disorders. And this is where recovering from them requires more than just setting the mind. The mind is the first step. If you don't set the mind, you will never overcome. You can have all the help in the world, all the facilities in the world, but if the mind isn't set, you'll never be able to overcome it. And in many cases, simply setting the mind isn't quite enough because there's other factors. Addiction actually works chemically in the brain. Now, that's not an excuse by any means. It's just a way of understanding that which is happening is not just about a weakness of mind. There's actually an entire chemical reaction, process, pattern that happens in the brain that makes it more than just a matter of, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to use. We also know that which leads to a lot of addictions, that which leads to eating disorders, in a huge, overwhelming percentage of cases, is trauma. And that's why it's not just about setting the mind. In most cases, again, not all, but a huge percentage of them, there's trauma that needs to be dealt with. There's trauma that needs to be addressed. There's trauma that needs to be worked with. There's a healing within that needs to happen along with setting the mind to, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to use, I'm not going to engage in these behaviors. It's also important to realize that in a lot of cases, that which propels people into addiction that internal sense that says, I'm suffocating in here. I can't live in here anymore. It is unbearable. In this mind, in this body, in this experience of a jail inside me that leads people to drink, that leads them to use, whether it's drugs or food. While the solution, the alcohol, the drugs, the food, is certainly not in any way a functional or appropriate solution. That which leads people to that is actually in many cases a spiritual yearning. It's an experience inside that says, this moment, I am suffocating. This moment, in my present circumstance, in my present situation, in this mind, in this body, I want out. I want out. Now, again, of course, using alcohol, using drugs, using food doesn't get you out. All it does is it temporarily, chemically, electrically, numbs you. It chemically, it electrically takes you away from the present moment through artificial means. It's not giving you what you're really looking for. But it's important to recognize that the yearning, the urge of it's suffocating in here, in this mind, in this body, in this role. And this is where, of course, spirituality tells us something very similar, which is, hey, you're not your mind. You're not your body. You're not your present circumstances. You're not your situation. You're not that experience that feels like it is suffocating you. You are the soul. You are the spirit, which is infinite, boundless. Not the body, not the mind, not the role, not the career, not the title, none of that, which, yeah, is pretty suffocating. No wonder you want out. But the alcohol and the drugs and the food don't get you out. They actually just suffocate you even more. Then you wake up in the same situation. But now you're hungover. Now you're coming down. Now you've got toxicity in the body. Now you've got a headache. Now you are suffering in so many other ways. But recognize, again, it bears repeating over and over again, that the solution through alcohol, through drugs, through food is far, far from efficient, far from functional. Doesn't take you where you want to go. But the urge, that sense of, I want out of this present moment. I want out of that vice I feel like I'm in, of my mind, of the waves of my emotions. That yearning, that urge, is a spiritual quest. Yoga, as is said so beautifully in the Yoga Sutras, is the stilling of the waves of the mind. That's yoga. So whether we're using drugs, alcohol, or food in a dysfunctional way to bring about a stilling of the mind, whether it's a high, whether it's inebriation, whether it's a carbohydrate overload, whether it's a rush of endorphins, through starvation, through vomiting, through over-exercising. What they all do is they give a temporary respite from the waves of the mind, which Patanjali told us so beautifully is actually what yoga gives us. So spirituality gives us the way of achieving that, of experiencing that, in a way that actually lasts, in a way that's real, in a way that's true, not in a way that's just numbing you or distracting you. So when you suffer from addiction, recognize, A, very likely there is unexamined trauma. Look at it. Open up to it. See it. Heal it. Acknowledge it. Number 2, it doesn't mean you're weak. Number 3, there's a lot of ways to get help. Get help. Reach out. There is nothing to be ashamed of. As a society, we must stop blaming people. We must stop the stigmas so that people can get the help they need. Coming forward and saying, I have a problem, is very brave. It's very courageous. And it's the necessary first step to getting help. Reach out. Whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, whatever it may be, Overeaters Anonymous, there's so many places these days with the internet. You don't even have to leave your home. That being said, once COVID restrictions are over, actually being in people's presence is very healing. So it's great to have an online network of support. But if you can get a physical network, once the restrictions are over, get one. Reach out, get help. Help exists, it's there for you. A beautiful, beautiful dear friend of mine, Tommy Rosen, leads lots of online programs for overcoming addiction. There's so many opportunities. Reach out. You deserve it. You deserve to be free. And you can. But don't feel weak that you can't do it alone. Reach out. And then the second question, connected to that but separate. Being the alcohol and drug use, not necessarily addiction though, but the alcohol and drug use, recreational perhaps, of people in Bollywood. As the question asked, why people who have everything are turning to alcohol and drugs. And it's so interesting because I grew up, as many of you know, in Los Angeles, in a world full of celebrities, in a world full of people who had everything. And I remember when I first came to India, and people thought, oh God, if I could just go to America, could just be like people are on the TV, then I would be happy. And I remember so many people saying, oh, please, send me to America. We see the TV serials. We want to be like that. And I remember explaining to people, and then not only people here, but people all over the world, as I started having the beautiful blessing of being able to teach and to share, saying to people, these people you see on TV in the movies, they are paid huge sums of money to do what? To act happy. Look at the TV serials that you watch. Most of what people have to do on those serials is look happy. They're happy about this, they're happy about that. Maybe there's a little fight happening here and there. Maybe they've got a little dilemma here and there. But most of the serials, people are being paid huge sums of money to look happy. The commercials, they're being paid only to look happy. And it's interesting because what we know psychologically is, if you're speaking the truth, it's very easy. if you really, really, really love chocolate, and somebody sticks a camera in your face and says, okay, tell me how much you love chocolate, you'll be able to do it really easily. But if you, say, hate a vegetable, say you hate bindi, or you hate karela, or whatever it may be, or you hate broccoli, and somebody sticks a camera in your face and says, tell me, convince me how much you love karela, you're going to be like, what are you going to give me? How much are you going to pay me? Like, I hate karela. Why would I say it? And I share this, even though I actually personally love karela, but it's just an example. Because the reason that people have to be paid so much money to look happy is because in many cases, they're not. It's one thing for stunt people to be paid a lot of money. Somebody jumping off a rooftop, doing a triple, quadruple flip, landing on the, arms of the clock. That's something, that's impressive. People doing special things, acting in a way like people they're really not. Good guys being villains. But simply acting happy, simply acting like I love chocolate or I love a cup of coffee, simply acting like I'm really happy hanging out with my friends in a diner. Why do we have to be paid so much money to do that? Because in many cases, these people actually aren't happy. The world that I grew up in was a world full of drug abuse, of alcoholism, of eating disorders, of people on their 4th and 5th marriages. A world of people who have everything, but who clearly are suffering inside. And there's a lot of reasons to examine that, but what's important, the core meaning is, just because you're rich, just because you're famous, just because you've got a big house and lots of cars and lots of followers on social media, those things have nothing to do with happiness. And if recent events in the news in Bollywood haven't convinced you, do some research. Find out. Hollywood, Bollywood, drug abuse, alcoholism, eating disorders, suicide, depression. How many of them are on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicines, sleeping pills? Go backstage at any rock concert. How much drugs, how much alcohol required just to be able to come out on stage and look like we're having a good time? Why? Because there's so much misery. Recreational drug use, alcohol, in Hollywood, in Bollywood, in the movie industry, in the music industry, this isn't new. As I said, this is what I grew up with, but it's been going on long before even I grew up. The alcohol and drug use of actors, actresses, musicians, this is part of the package deal. And it makes you wonder and really think about it. Why is it? And what it makes us realize is a life that is committed and dedicated and focused on making money, superficiality, weighing a certain amount, having the right color skin, the right shade of it, not having a pimple, not having wrinkles, looking exactly right. Not only is that very superficial, but it's also very stressful. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be in a situation where someone said to me, you better lose 15 pounds or you lose your job. Or someone said to me, God, those wrinkles on your face, your career's over. Imagine. Imagine how distressing it must be, actually, to be in a world where your acceptance, your fan base, the love that you get, your career, the money you make, is based on things as superficial as the shape of your body, the tone of your skin, what you look like. Because the truth is, we're all getting older every day. Even actors and actresses, musicians. People's looks change. And to live in a world where there has to be such death grip control over the face, the hair, the body, everything, and where you know that all of this acceptance is only based superficially, it would depress me to no end. So it doesn't surprise me that there is the alcohol and drug use. What's important for us, though, is don't judge. Everybody, regardless of who you are, where you are, what you do, how much you make, how you make it, we are all going through our own karmic dramas. We're all fulfilling our own karma in the very best way we can. We all have our own stresses. We all have our own difficulties. We all have our own challenges. And we all deal with them in our own ways. So don't judge. Don't condemn. Don't fall into that sense of building someone up and then taking them down. But do take a lesson, which is for everyone who thought, if I just looked like her, or had money like him, or had muscles like him, then I would be happy. Realize, no, you wouldn't. Because those things are not what bring happiness. And all of the Bollywood and Hollywood musicians, actors, actresses I know who are happy, who don't use alcohol, who don't use drugs, they are the ones whose happiness is not rooted in their profession. They do it. They love it. They're great actors, great actresses, great musicians. But their sense of self is not rooted in that. The ones I know, the friends I have, who don't use alcohol or drugs, but who are famous actors, actresses, musicians, are because their anchoring, their grounding, is not in the parts they play, is not in the money they make, is not in their followers on social media, but it's actually, in most cases, in spirituality. It's in their family, it's in their seva, in their beautiful service work. Yeah, they love acting, but they're not getting that sense of worth from it. They do it because they love it. They're grateful to be able to make a living doing something they love, but they're not anchored and grounded in that superficiality of it. They're anchored and grounded in something much deeper. And so that lesson is the same for all of us. But it's a good reminder all the time that wherever you are, everyone has challenges. Wherever you are, everyone has to dive deeper into the self for that anchoring, for that grounding.
Thank you. The second question is, I've been in the Hare Krishna movement for more than 30 years, but unfortunately many bad things have happened in the community. I have found reading Yog Vashisht and meditating brings more relief from feeling of despair than chanting the Hare Krishna mantra does. I have lost faith in the Hare Krishna movement, so I have two choices: to disbelieve or to continue my spirituality with tools that can really help me, which I prefer? What do I do?
Tragically these days, with media being the way it is, and especially now with social media, media has always been about sensationalism. It's always been about scandals. That's what sells. But these days it's gotten worse. We also now, of course, have social media, which takes things like wildfire. And what you end up with is a situation where that which is negative gets much more play, much more highlight than that which is positive. Now, as the questioner raised about the Hare Krishna movement and there being scandals and difficulties and losing his or her faith in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, don't. Everywhere in the world, and spirituality is no exception, people are people. Now, yes, absolutely, people who are on a spiritual path, especially those who are leaders on a path, especially those who are being channels of God's teaching, are held up to a much higher mark, and therefore have a much higher responsibility to ensure that they act, that they live as beautiful representatives of Dharma. That's true not only in the Hare Krishna community, it's true in all of our religious communities. It's true everywhere that you are in a leadership position, especially one regarding religion and spirituality. But not only that, it's true in yoga studios, it's true in meditation classes, it's true wherever people are coming to learn, to dive deeply, to grow from you as a leader, as a teacher. So yes, there's a much higher bar of responsibility that those of us in leadership roles in spirituality are held up to and should be held up to. And we must maintain it. And people are still people, which means that some will not maintain that standard. Sadly, tragically. It shouldn't happen, but it does. And so across the world, across lineages, across traditions, across religions, there are scandals. There are stories of leaders not behaving the way that leaders should behave. Not behaving the way that people should behave, aside from leaders. Stories of leaders breaking vows, stories of leaders manipulating, stories of leaders abusing. And again, this is not limited to any lineage, tradition, or religion. It's everywhere. But here's what is essential. Number one, the teachings are not the teacher. I could have a beautiful book of the Bhagavad Gita, and there could be a flood in my house while I was away, or God forbid, a fire in my house while I was away, and that Gita could get full of water. It could burn. But that doesn't mean that the teachings of the Gita are any less powerful or real or transformative. It just means that the medium through which I was learning them has burnt or is full of water. It could fall. It could fall tragically, accidentally out of my hand into sewage. You could be walking down the street holding the Gita in your hands and accidentally you trip, you fall. It falls out of your hands, it falls into the gutter, it falls into sewage. Does that mean that Lord Krishna's teachings are any less powerful or real? Of course not. It just means that the medium through which I was learning them now has become burned, wet, soiled, dirty, whatever it may be. And that's true with the living teachers as well as it's true with just a physical book. If I was learning the Bhagavad Gita through a teacher, and it turned out that that teacher was not living the Gita, that doesn't mean that the teachings of the Gita are any less. It just means that the medium through which I was learning turned out to be not as pure and perfect as I had thought. And that's a tragedy. As I said, it shouldn't happen. But it does sometimes. And in my mind, I actually see this, along with being a tragedy on the part of the leaders, I see it actually as God's compassion and God's forgiveness, because what it means is that God sends perfect teachings through imperfect teachers. But that doesn't mean that the teachings are not perfect. And so just because a leader, a teacher, even a system, a school, a lineage, and it's never, of course, a whole school or a whole lineage. It's going to be one or it's going to be a few. May not have been perfect vehicles or perfect vessels. It doesn't mean the teachings are not perfect. So do not lose faith in Krishna. Do not lose faith in chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The mantra is perfect. The teachings are perfect. But the medium through which you were learning them wasn't necessarily perfect. And that's okay. They'll go through their own karmic path, learn their own lessons. And again, it's a tragedy because people, of course, lose faith like you've lost faith. But it's essential not to lose faith. It's essential to hold on to the purity of the teaching. Excuse me. Lineages, sampradayas, religions. The bigger they are, the greater the chances are there's going to be some challenge within it. But don't throw away. Don't throw away the beauty, the divinity of the teachings and of the other teachers, of the other vessels, of the other mediums. Now, as you said, you've started reading Yoga Vasishtha. Beautiful. So many paths, and all paths take us to the same place. So yes, of course, another way of attaining oneness with God is also beautiful. No problem in there. But what I worry about specifically for you is that sense of betrayal, that sense of loss, that sense of lack of faith. Because that's going to harm you on your path. And so you need to realize that Krishna is perfect. The mantras of Krishna are perfect. The Bhagavad Gita is perfect. And many, many, many of the teachers of the lineage are very close to perfect vehicles. But just because a few of them aren't, doesn't mean you should lose hope. There are stories, tragically, of doctors who rape patients on the operating table. But that doesn't mean that we don't go to doctors or that we don't get an operation. There are stories, tragically, of teachers who molest their children in the classroom. Doesn't mean that we don't send our children to school. Doesn't mean that we lose faith in the whole system of education or the system of medicine. In the same way, just because there have been a few challenges, don't lose faith in the whole beautiful, divine system. Chant the mantra. Connect with Krishna. And if you don't want to do it through a lineage, through a sampradaya, no problem. Krishna's there for you. Krishna's there for you directly. You don't have to go through a parampara to get there. But don't stop chanting. Don't stop the mantra. Don't stop the faith in Krishna. Hold on to that. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. Beautiful morning and day, wherever you are in this beautiful world. And we'll see you all Thursday for Satsang. Have a beautiful couple of days. Hold on. Hold on to that faith. Stay anchored, stay grounded. Stay rooted in that faith in your heart. It's the most precious, precious, precious gift.
Vargo